use this one. And I use this one. Okay.
Thank you so much. And really, I'll try to, since you're a little behind, I'll try to be as quick as I can because it's very humbling to be speaking after this wonderful science that we heard. And I certainly don't want to get in the way of you having a chance of discussing and conversing with our wonderful editors and editors-in-chief. It's such a great honor to be running a great organization like ASM, and so much pride, particular in our journals and the activities that we do. As you know, we have such fabulous editors and editors-in-chief that are really focused on helping you publish and helping you move your career forward. So take full advantage of this opportunity of meeting them and conversing with them and get your career propelled forward by publishing with ASM. We really take it very seriously to help scientists succeed in that. So what I would like to do in the next few minutes is advance the slide. Oh, it's turned off. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, perfect. Excellent. I like to think that we're living, I'm from Italy, which is the cradle of the Renaissance, and I like to think that we have the fortune of living in the Renaissance of the microbial sciences. And of course, I don't need to convince you because you're the experts, but let me tell you from my perspective why I say that. Number one, I think that new technologies, relatively recent, actually, have completely transformed the microbial sciences. Metagenomics has been a game changer because we were very limited on what we could study in microbiology. Only the very few, 1%, what is it? It's still around that number probably, of microbes that we can cultivate. But now, even though that is still a great barrier, but now we can learn so much more. And this has actually allowed us, this new microbiology has actually allowed us to gain phenomenal understanding about biology that we didn't know before. We learned that neuroscience and the brain is deeply affected by what happened in the gut, which gives gut feeling a whole new meaning, right? And also oncology, metastasis in cancer, how affected they are by microbes, metabolic diseases and disorders like obesity, and I can keep going. But it's not just in health, it's also in sustainability. The role that microbes play as friends and foe of sustainability and climate change is absolutely amazing. And the future that we can chart for improving sustainability in a world that is greatly challenged by that can really harness the powers of microbe to do that. So it's also applied to technologies in diagnostics. I always think that in hospitals, the microbiology lab in the old days used to be the last door at the end of the hallway to the right, fundamentally because it stinks, and ultimately also because it's never been a revenue generator for the hospital. You streak a plate, it costs $1, you wait 3 days, and then eventually you come up with a pathogen. Now, it's different. I think antimicrobial resistance, which you heard great talks before, has completely been a game changer for that. You can't wait 3 days to get a response. The patient is going to die. And so you need rapid diagnostics, which is a complete game changer, much more expensive and much more innovative. This changing the whole paradigm of the role of microbiology in fundamental and applied clinical in the hospital and in the lab. So this also brings the very interesting concept of diagnostic as therapeutics at so multiple levels. And we saw it at the very beginning of the COVID pandemic when we didn't have a complete new virus and we didn't have any therapeutics, we didn't have any prevention, and we had to rely on diagnostics to really save lives. And being able to do that, especially with a great number of asymptomatic patients, it was absolutely essential for that. And this is all thanks to these technologies that microbial sciences can foster and can really help make the world a better place. But what I find perhaps among the most fascinating aspects is what we call the circular economy. And I don't think it's a wonderful term, it doesn't fully capture it. But the concept of the power of microbes to be able to transform what are waste products, which could be waste products in the sewer of a city or waste product from agriculture, and really transform to very complex fermentation processes like fermented lignocellulosic products, which blows my mind how you can do that, but you can, and eventually turn those waste products into high-value raw material that can re-enter, this circle of production. Studies from McKinsey have actually shown that it will be possible to substitute something like 70% of the physical input into the system, into the economy, like hydrocarbons and everything, with biological products. Think about the game changing that microbes can have in this role and in this new concept of economy, of sustainability, of health, and be part of everyday's life as we experience it. Well, if the dome on the Cathedral of Florence was the symbol of the Renaissance, I think the microbes will be the symbol of the 21st century Renaissance because of the impact that they have on all this. But there are some challenges with this. Number one, the challenge that I see is that there is an interface between microbiology and non-microbiology, which is getting blurred, but it's difficult because scientists and the field think differently, because we're often science has been built over a long period of time, especially microbiology, one of the oldest sciences, and it's still very siloed. We still think in different ways. And I heard some very interesting presentations here. And one example that ASM has tried to overcome this was creating the National Microbiome Data Collaborative, which is a separate organization, but it's spun out of ASM. And it started from the concept of saying, we need to capture the information from microbiome in the right databases that are not just genetic databases, because if we just look at DNA or RNA sequences, then we capture that very well. We have a lot of instruments, but the metadata associated with that in genetic repositories very often are just footnotes. But metadata for microbiome data are just data, and it can be fundamental. So transforming the research infrastructure, like the repositories, to be able to take full advantage of the knowledge that is generated is absolutely fundamental. And these are really complex things because of a privacy issue for health data and interoperability of many different systems. Training is another very important aspect, and the next talk will focus on this. And of course, all this is happening at mind-boggling speed because everything is accelerated. So it feels like that we're always out of breath in trying to catch up. And don't forget that we need to do all this with tight budgets, which are tight for everyone. So I think these challenges are real challenges that we're confronted with, but they're really challenges worth taking and important to tackle them because of what I just said before, the opportunities that are in front of us. We can't miss out on those opportunities. And this is what ASM is about. ASM is about fostering and capturing those opportunities and lowering the activation energy of these challenges. To do so, ASM has embarked 3 years ago with its board of directors in an exercise which is called Micro 2040. And what we did is, let's think of what the world in 2040 would look like from what the microbial sciences will look in 2040, and also what the world would need in 2040 from the microbial sciences. Of course, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know. And as scientists, we are very uncomfortable. Where's the data? Well, there is no data. We're imagining here. But so we created 3 scenarios. The first was an optimistic scenario where everything that can possibly go right, it will. And this was exhilarating in thinking what the potential of the field is. Of course, there's a converse, the pessimistic scenario, everything that can possibly go wrong, it will, and the middle of the road scenario. With this in mind, then the board in the Micro 2040 project came to an aha moment and said, well, if all of these 3 possible scenarios could happen, and we don't know exactly if they happen this way, obviously, but in some way, form, or shape, everybody felt these are all possible things. This is not science fiction, this is real. And so the question became, shouldn't ASM, as the largest microbiology society in the world, be responsible for trying to harness your expertise, your power, to really steer the future toward the most desirable scenarios and fend off the most threatening one? Otherwise, why are we in business if we don't do that, right? And so we came up with a new structure for ASM that will be our roadmap for the future years. And in thinking of organizing ourselves around 3 scientific units that you see depicted in this slide, ASM Mechanism of Discovery, which captures the fundamental sciences, ASM Health, and ASM Applied and Environmental Microbiology. And you see here the different areas that will go under these 3 units that will guide the future of ASM. I don't have time to describe all this, obviously, but keep in mind that all this is circular. And it's essential that these are integrated because not a single topic, not a single problem will fit into one of these. And this is the graphic that really try to capture this concept of interaction and interdisciplinarity. Also, notice that there are these lines that are drawing in the energy inside the circle. And this is our rendering of the concept and the willingness that we have at ASM of drawing in those interfaces, those gray areas, so to speak, of microbial sciences and other fields of people who may be interacting and working on microbes every day, but they may not think of themselves as microbiologists. And we want to ensure that they are fully part of the family and that ASM can really be an infrastructure for them to accelerate their science and to produce all the knowledge that can be produced. So why do we need to embark in something like this? Well, first of all, because we thought that it was important to start with a forward-looking, coherent, and integrated construct. We always think of ASM from services that we can provide, journals, meetings like this one here and many more, and they're very important. But at the heart, these are tools. These are all instruments to really serve a bigger goal, which is that of advancing the knowledge and making the world a better place. And that's why we try to think of a structure that starts with the end in mind and what we're trying to do, and all the other aspects, meeting, journals, training, education, are going to be instruments that we really support that vision and empower, most of all, the ASM members and all the scientists. This is a very, very important concept, to be you in the driver's seat, you the microbiologist, to define what needs to happen in the field rather than having outside telling you what it should be, understanding what the challenges are and charting what the future should be. What are the priorities? What are the topics? What do we need? What if we remove that roadblock? How can we accelerate the path to that solution? This is what ASM wants to be. ASM wants to be a platform, a scaffold, an infrastructure. Use the image that better works for you to really empower the community to think what needs to happen, and we'll be the ones that will carry the torch and will try to make that happen. And I already described the three areas. Since we're talking a lot about journals here, I also want to mention our utmost commitment to open access, that ASM was very advanced from the beginning in going to gold, high-level gold open access journals. Now, from next year, we're shifting all our journals to open access in a model called Subscribe to Open. And I could not be more excited by this, because it is something that we thought long and hard about, and it is designed to make it as effective and cost saving for the authors. Because of everything I said before, we want to empower you to lead the field. So we want to walk our talk. And the model of APCs that really, for open access, often overcharge the authors in order to make it open access, we felt was not matching the values of what we carry for ASM. And so we developed this new model with partnership developed with institutions to be able to lower the costs for authors to publishing. So in the future, actually publishing in ASM journals for the authors would actually be significantly less than what it is now with the APC's model. You can imagine from where I sit, the guy who has to pay the bills, the guy who has to go at the board of directors and say, here's the budget. This is a challenge, and it is what keeps me awake at night. But I know that we will make it work one way or the other, and we will course correct. But we will not veer from these concepts of empowering our scientists to be able to publish the best science in the ASM journal in the most cost-effective way possible. Of course, we need you to help us by publishing in ASM journals. And so this is very, very important. And in order to do that, it is a very important concept, that of being inclusive, because it's an issue of making it affordable and inclusive at a national level. We have 35 branches in the United States all across the country, and very often this cover students and teaching professors and everyone who may not be able to engage at a national level. And so we want to be very committed to this, and we have a lot of projects in that direction, and also at a global level. And this meeting here is, for example, the result of such strategy. One of the first things where we want to engage with our members all across the world in a very effective way, and in partnership with the local organization like Tsinghua, and I'm incredibly thankful to this partnership that we think it's so essential. So why this is important, and I'm going to wrap up very soon. If you are not familiar with this, this is something that I think it's very, very important to keep in mind. So these are United Nations estimates from UN POP for the population at a world level. And so in 1989, which is the date, I like this date a lot because it marks the fall of the Berlin Wall. And I think that that's where the world, at least in our time, has completely changed. There were about 5 billion people roaming on the Earth. Next year, we will surpass the 8 billion people on Earth. And that is an incredibly staggering growth since 1989. But look at what will happen in 2075. There will be over 10 billion people on Earth, which is mind-boggling in many respects. But it's even more interesting if you look at the distribution of the population across the world. It's going to be a very different world. Europe is going to shrink. Parts of North America are going to shrink. I don't know if there are any Canadian in the room. Canada is basically going to disappear, it looks like, right? They're really, really, really reducing population in that respect. Asia, where China plays such a bigger role, is going to grow a little bit, but at a different, certainly at a different pace that it has up to now. And look at Africa. Africa is going to double its population, which is incredible from a geopolitical aspect, and certainly from an infectious diseases and microbiological perspective. Imagine double the population with the current African infrastructure from a health and epidemiological perspective. Another very interesting point of view in thinking about the future is this report from Goldman Sachs, which actually looks at the projected largest economies in the world. You see it in 1980, the ranking in 2022 and in 2075. And you see that China will be leading the economies in 2075. And this is no surprise in many respects. But look also at the other countries down the list in 2075. India, United States, Indonesia, Nigeria, Pakistan, Egypt, Brazil. These are not the usual suspects, right? And this is fascinating from my perspective. And this is why, as scientists, we need to engage at a global level, because 2075 is around the corner. And we really need to think of science as a global home and of the scientific problems addressed at a global level, and not with the usual 2-3 countries, that we've been dealing with for the past 20 or years or more. So that is why it's so important to have partnership and to engage in thinking about the future. So I am finished. Just summing up what I told you about. ASM Scientific Units is the way we're trying to hold the space for the future of science and be a platform to support all of you and empower everyone who wants to engage in ASM in defining what the future of the science should be. We have to think in an interdisciplinary way. The silos won't hold the space for the future. We need to think globally. We cannot just think of our own homes. And this is, I think, it's a very important concept that, unfortunately, very often as scientists we forget, is that we are in science to serve. We are in science to serve people. We are in science, whether it's health, whether that's the environment, whether it's that society at large. And so we have a big responsibility of helping people solve their problems. And we believe that science is a very powerful tool to do that, and we need to take that responsibility. And in order to do that, as I mentioned, the concept of open access, open data, open science, and collaboration are really important. As I was saying yesterday to our colleagues here in China that we met, we believe that forging this partnership under an open concept, and I believe that scientific societies are very powerful in that, because when you get a different level of institution, it can be more complicated. This is fundamental, because when we have a crisis, when we have a problem, it is not the time to exchange business cards. We need to have those relationships in science built along the way and be ready to work together to solve problems. So thank you very much, and I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the meeting.